A gathering of Cook Islanders in a community centre in Auckland. Polynesian culture, after remaining local to the Pacific Islands for at least half of this century, is now a living reality in the cities of New Zealand and Australia. Auckland is said to be the largest Polynesian city in the world, witness to the traditions of many different island groups. The boy, Tivaevae, is the focus of a coming-of-age ceremony which all Cook Island families try to organize for their sons, especially their firstborn. His hair has grown from birth. Now it is being cut for the first time in the presence of more than 300 relatives and well-wishers. Each guest cuts a strand. The applique needlework design spread at his feet is called a Tivaevae. Like the embroidered pillows edged with lace, it's women's work, as is the starched crochet basket which receives the guests' donations. Previously, women would have made fine bark cloth or articles woven from pandanus leaves or coconut fronds for this kind of occasion. The community as a whole benefits from parties like this. What has been a rite of passage for Tivaevae serves to remind others of life in the islands. The Cook Islands lie west of Tahiti, in the South Pacific in the Tropic of Capricorn. Each island is far from its neighbour, but Cook Islanders share a common ancestry with Tahitians and New Zealand Maoris. This is the story of the artistically talented and industrious women of the Cook Islands and of just one of their artifacts, Tivaevae. Tivaevae are applique or pieced needlework designs of a size to cover a large bed. Called bed covers, they're not used as such. Rather, they have to be understood as a form of wealth created and transacted by women. The big books on Polynesian art don't mention Tivaevae. Perhaps because they're women's work and therefore pretty invisible, they've been ignored. The contention of this film is that making Tivaevae is an art with an important place in the life of the Cook Island community, well understood by all. The language is Cook Island's Maori. But the story of Tivaevae can also be heard in English.
In Achu, there's an old saying, if you haven't got the Tivaevae, you're not a woman. So it's a must to have a Tivaevae. And making Tivaevae is also an art. It is an art. It is an art. So it is a must to have something that we are proud to have in the home.
Sometime last century, the women of the Cook Islands learned European needlework, probably from the missionary wives, because in the history of this part of the Pacific, it was missionaries who were the main agents of change. The particular missionary society which was first on the scene was the London Missionary Society, whose effect was remarkable. Within decades, the ritualized cultural practices of ancient Polynesia were wiped out and replaced with Christianity. With Christianity came Victorian family values, including modesty, which required clothing where there had previously been none. So started stitching, crocheting, tatting, and all forms of dressmaking and needlework, and the evolution of distinct island styles. Interestingly, one of the earliest forms of Tivaevae to be taken up in the islands, and nobody knows quite when, was a form of patchwork consisting of hundreds, even thousands of small squares, often assembled by women working together in a group, a form of activity that goes on to this day.
Green. One green. What? Three yellow.
This kind of Tivaevae is assembled in strips, each strip consisting of the correct sequence of coloured patches which are first strung on a thread. Older women are the experts at this kind of work, and they tell others. Obviously, mistakes in the order would be disastrous for the pattern, but amazingly, huge complicated Tivaevae exist all error-free. A Tivaevae like this, about 7 feet square with 3/4 inch squares, would contain more than 12,000 pieces. But most Tivaevae designs draw their inspiration from the natural world, from plants such as hibiscus and kuru, or breadfruit leaves. The red and yellow flowers on this Tivaevae are hibiscus. The leaves are kuru leaves. But foreign flowers also feature, like chrysanthemums, with their many petals and more indented leaves. Orchids are also popular, as are roses, lilies and pansies, even if they don't grow here. Tivaevae designs are nearly always symmetrical, with each half, even each quarter, the reflection of its opposite. Tivaevae are part of a wider aesthetic tradition, best seen in Cook Island houses, with beautiful objects on display.
Everybody on design has Tivaevaes in their houses. They are very, very important to the mamas for beautifying our homes, as well as for wedding and for hair cutting ceremony, and as well as for big occasions on this island.
Iron bedsteads with frilled canopies are settings for brilliantly coloured Tivaevae and embroidered pillows. The colours of the background cloth and the applique design are chosen for maximum contrast. Embroidery, often in multicoloured silken thread, elaborates the rich effect.
I had more than 30 Tivaevae when I started cutting, but my daughter has been traveling to Australia, and I have given her 12 Tivaevae because she's 21, and that is my present to my daughter. That is my eldest one in my family.
It's the mamas of the Cook Islands, the older women, who are at the centre of all this activity. This adventure of fabric, fibre, colour, shape and design. It's they who have the knowledge and skills required. Hats, by the way, are just another of their accomplishments. If every house has a Tivaevae, every Tivaevae tells a story. Giving and receiving Tivaevae connects families through the female line.
My mother used to cut her own Tivaevae and sew it. And she made a lot of Tivaevaes. And that's how I learned how to sew from her. She made one for my marriage with my husband. And it's a white background with a star. We call it A2. And I'm still treasuring that. When my mother died, we wrapped her with some Tivaevae. We put Tivaevae on her. And some of the families, close family, sisters or her children, came with the Tivaevae and put it on her. And before she was put in the coffin, we wrapped her with one Tivaevae because that was meant for her.
Making Tivaevae is a skill which has to be learnt. Not all women are confident to draw their own designs. Some look to others for help. Those who are good cutters can always remember how they learned, often from an older, valued family member.
I learned this skill from my own grandmother, who was a very skillful woman in women's handwork. And I remember her so well with joy and pride. And just watching her teach a lot of women, I picked up a few of her skills. At the age of 12 and a half, I think, I started cutting my first Tivaevae. This applique one, just like the one I was just doing. It was a funny hibiscus-like thing. I managed to get it done. And then at the age of 13, I joined a women's group here in Rarotonga. And I must say I was the youngest out of most of those women who were in their 40s, 50s. And so I just followed the crowd. Every time I hear women's getting together, I go there. Uninvited, but I took interest in this thing. And somehow some of these old women kept seeing me in this group, so they sort of just fit me in. But I was doing my own thing. And when I was 19 years old, I remembered when my birthday was being celebrated. I was so proud that the whole location was decorated with the Tivaevae that I made myself.
Many groups exist today on Rarotonga and other islands of the Southern Cooks.
If you want to learn how to cut Tivaevae, you just get the leaf or any flower, just put it on the material and then you cut it. But if you are good in drawing, you know how to cut Tivaevae. Some women, they like to share. Some women, they don't like you having their pattern. But with me, I can share my own pattern instead of keeping to myself.
Groups share more than just skills. There's strength and confidence in this group, which also has high standards about the need to have a good time while they work. Not all Tivaevae are made in groups, but many are started there for the difficult cutting and tacking stages. Some groups are highly organized with uniforms and bank accounts.
Each year we have a subscription of $10 per member. I put that in the bank, and if the lady wants to have a Tivaevae, I go to the shop and find out the exact amount of money that I have to spend on one Tivaevae, and I draw the money out and give it to the person who's going to have the Tivaevae for her to go and choose her own color and buy a cotton to go with that Tivaevae. Then you have to get the material and give it to the lady who is expert of cutting it. This is Mamatu in our group. Because it is not easy to cut the Tivaevae. And when it's finished, she'll have to give it to the group to tack it on, to put together the background and the top.
Tapea aoroto tilongai sorima Tapea kai poi po piriangai naro.
It is a lot of work to do on the Tivaevae, but it depends on the pattern. If I do it myself, if I have to sit and do it every day, I can finish the manu in a week or two. But us in the Cook Islands, because we've got a lot of work to do, we go and pick rubbish, do the cooking and do the washing. We go and we go back on the Tivaevae, you know, well, twice or 3 times a week. It will take us about 2 months to finish.
As it happens, Mama Tu's design was stitched in Auckland and took 2 women almost a week to complete. The stitches were tiny, almost invisible on the back. Finished, the Tivaevae is a beautiful example of a breadfruit design with both leaves and fruit in a classically contrasting color combination. The move to the metropolis has brought Cook Island life into a wider frame. Many mamas now live in Auckland, where they play the same family role as in the islands, lending their stability to a society in a state of change. They do things which are really important: speaking the language, telling the stories, cooking the right food, caring for grandchildren, perhaps making Tivaevae, and attending church, where, once again, the missionary hymns, like the missionary-taught needlework, are a blend of European ideas and something that is uniquely Polynesian. This hymn was written by one of the first missionaries in the 1830s. The thorough destruction of the ancient culture of the Cook Islands at that time means that we shall never know for sure how the old taboos relating to gender and art actually worked. But it does seem that, in the past, serious art was men's work. Only they could use hard materials like stone and wood, and only they could make figurative representations. Women, in ancient times, were prevented from reproducing the human form, except biologically, of course. Their territory was pattern-making, in the form of weaving and painting bark cloth with flowers, leaves, and geometric designs. Paradoxically, these taboos have favored women's art. For while Tivaevae making has been seen as an extension of the allowable weaving and bark cloth skills, carving sacred objects with semi-magical adzes has pretty much died out. Tivaevae flowers take on a new significance when seen in this light. The overwhelming preference for this kind of design is far from simple-minded, but originates hundreds of years ago in pre-European contact Polynesian culture. Tivaevae in New Zealand are being rediscovered by a new generation.
Well, Mum's Rarotongan and Dad's from New Zealand, and they got married and they moved over here. So when they moved, we lived a New Zealand lifestyle and just brought up with an everyday sense of living over here. So I've never really been brought up in the Rarotongan tradition. A Tivaevae is important to me because it does show that I am Rarotongan and I am proud of it.
Right, it has bright red hibiscus flowers with yellow stamens. In the centre of the Tivaevae is a basket, which I think is a flax basket, with big large leaves coming out, sort of the type that you would expect from a tropical climate. Around the edges is the border of the same colours which the Tivaevae is made up of, which contains the whole thing.
I have a friend of mine who is about quarter Rarotongan through his father's side, so therefore his mother doesn't make him Tivaevaes. And I actually told him that I was getting one, and he was really interested, and he was quite disappointed that he wasn't getting one and I was.
While the traditional practices of the islands are valued, they will remain strong, even in a new society.
Well, I was a little girl. I loved sitting beside all, mainly with my grandmother, listening, to all the little gossips as they do the Tivaevae. And I just enjoy and learn from that stage. Until I got older, well, it's time for me to learn. And I think it's a natural talent. You can learn it. But you have to be among the older ladies to be able to catch all that. A Tivaevae like this is normally done by a group of women. They get together and sort out what sort of pattern or what design they would like to do. There were 4 women involved in making this one. It's about 2 years ago. This Tivaevae is done really a vase of flowers. So I've got a hibiscus here, which showing a lot of interesting stitches or embroidery on. Each flower was given to each woman to do what she would like to do, or any embroidery she would think would suit the flower. Further down here, we can see a rose here. We don't see a blue rose, but I think this is imagination from a person, her own artistic way of looking at things. This particular one here turned out to be a blue rose. A Tivaevae is one of the best gifts, or shall I say, it's an ultimate gift. And you cannot value it. You cannot put a price tag on it. It's a work of art. That's the way I can only interpret the Tivaevae.
And that's how Tivaevae have to be understood, as significant gifts in a society which sets great store by gift-giving, and where genealogy and family connections are all important. Hair cuttings, birthdays, comings of age and marriages all demand significant gifts publicly bestowed. At these moments, nothing beats a Tivaevae. Nothing contains so much work, represents so much artistic effort and skill. Nothing is as unique and identifiable as a Tivaevae. But the art of Tivaevae has come out of the past, from a world without television or 9-to-5 jobs, where there was time for handwork. Its future may be different.
Most of the young ones, they have more time on television than doing the real work. I always told my own girls to do something with their hands while watching the television, but they don't. They still sit and watch television. Maybe when they get married, that's when they think, well, my mother's right.